There was a time in security where we were struggling to defeat our enemies. The young lady, Alice Lakwena, took us on with sticks and stones and some spiritual powers. A national army with guns and everything, and they ran us up to probably Busoga because we had not invested. So the president looked at that and said, based on this evidence, I must commit money. So he committed 30% of the national budget to security. And as we speak today, Uganda is one of the toughest countries when it comes to security. Because of the data, the evidence we had, we used that evidence, made decisions to invest our money. Even the PDM, he moved around in 2013. He saw the plight of his former fighters under Frelimo. Is it Frelimo, Mr. Kapwep, one of your groups? So he said, then he saw his NRA fighters. Then he saw how many people were poor. He created Operation Wealth Creation. He said, we need to target these people who are fighting to survive, working for the stomach alone. But then in 2021, he moved around and the people were telling him, that you guys who were giving out inputs under NADS and OWC were serving your own interests and the interests of your relatives and friends. He said, I changed the model. He introduced PDM. So, data is crucial. And you will look at this one later on. Reasonability is mainly about context. That you have to understand the context. If we look at, for example, land tenure system, if you are to develop a land policy in Uganda, you cannot have a universal policy. Because when you go to Acholi, the land tenure system there is different to the land tenure system in Uganda. It's different to the land tenure system in Karamoja. When a certain group went to Acholi recently and sat on the land, they had done that in Uganda for a long time. But when they went there, they said, no, Bararo must go. And they were serious, and the president supported. So his policies are contextual. He will study a region and develop a policy that speaks to our own circumstances. When we came up with a law on homosexuality, while others opposed us in the West, he said, this is our way of life. This is our culture. This is the way we do things. So don't force us to do what you do. Still, that is reasonability. So there are examples here. I am told by Dan that you need to have breakfast, but let me finish the 7 pillars at least. Yes. So the third one, I will go through this very quickly. The third one is realism and logic. On realism, it's basically about reality. In Uganda, we have a saying, "Omumpi wako mawakwata." The short people like us. Yeah, I was talking in the opposite. I had to appreciate that I am a short man, you know. I used to be a boxer when I was young. So you would go in a ring, same weight. You know, in boxing, it's about weight, not height. So same weight with a tall boy. So he will be hitting you like this. But you have to hit his head, so you have to jump. So I was getting battered until I accepted that, you know what? I think I cannot manage this. Because the reality was I was short, I could not fight tall guys. So he said, where do I have my strength? That I have the strength in my head. Then I had to concentrate on education. So many years later, I am far richer than the boys who used to beat me up. Because I appreciated the reality. So this realism is not about what is implemented. I mean what is desirable. It is about what is implementable. So I use an example of what I saw in Chisoro. When I was there with General Kale, people were were telling us that, talking about how beautiful Chisoro was and how they could tap the terrain. So they said, you know, we can put cable cars here. So from that hill to the other hill. And you know, the tourists will come and they will be seeing our lake. I can't remember what the lake name was. So it was a beautiful place. And the idea was actually a good idea, desirable. They would say, you know, in Switzerland, this is the kind of terrain they have, and they are making a lot of money from tourists. I said, yes, that is all good. But what does it take to set up a cable car? So do you have electricity? So we now started talking. So when we talked and talked, logic kicked in. And people realized that actually we have our own limitations. So this pillar is about working within your own limitations. You accept the limitations and come up with solutions to address those limitations. And we have a number of cases. When they develop the NDP, the National Development Plan, there's what they call fiscal realism. They have to budget properly, and then they say we we must never exceed 4.2% as a budget deficit. We cannot overspend. Infrastructure expansion. Everybody knows we needed infrastructure, but we did not have money. People were saying, you do all of the roads. We could not do all the roads. When Kony is beating us, when he's killing and abducting children, and we have no money in the coffers, so what do? Do you finance infrastructure or you finance security? So if security is sorted and your people are dying of diseases, but somebody is saying, you please, Mr. Museveni, you need to pay for education of our children. Do you pay for education of the children when they cannot live the next day because measles is killing them? No, you focus on first things first. So realism was to identify our limitations as a country, our challenges, what we have, what we don't have. We know what is desirable, but based on our limitations, we cannot achieve them now. They can be achieved in the future. So we keep them on our radar. And we say, by 2040, when we are fully modernized, these are the things we will have. But for now, let us do first things first. So that is realism. And logic, of course, we have examples, which I have been explaining, that we focused on security first, then macroeconomic stability. Then as we were doing that, we invested in human capital. First of all, we invested in education, UPE. We invested in the health of our people. As we were doing that, we started building infrastructure. When we defeated Kony in 2006, more money now was freed into infrastructure development. So we started investing in roads, we invested in energy, and we are now at a level where we are ready for industrial development. Some people would say you should have started with industries. It was impossible. It was illogical. So the logic was security first. Have you got the infrastructure? Have you got the human capital that will work in these industries? And then once you've got that, the macroeconomic stability, is it there? Oh, inflation is uncontrollable. Or you cannot manage your foreign exchange. So once you've done all of those, now we can talk about industrialization. And that is logic. So Museveni as an economic philosopher is logical, is realistic. Number 4 is creativity and innovation. This is where PDM comes in very well. Everything we have done, including this meeting of the focal point person, is about being creative. We have no money, colleagues, as you know very well. We will be coming to your district, every district, and talk to you individually with your team. Afford it. Because we can't afford it, we say, let us invite them. But you remember where we came from? We started with TOTs. A few people coming into your district, train a few people, then a few people train others, and gradually we have covered the whole country. So, creativity is extremely important, and we have been applying it as a country. You have to apply this in your district. You need pioneering methods. You come up with new ideas or new ways of doing things to solve the problem. You should not just sit there and complain using the previous this previous principle, the pillar of realism, that, you know, we are a poor country, so what do we have? Some of us, we are very poor. Yeah? If it was to focus on poverty, who could not have gone to school? Today, you find the people saying, you know, Museveni brought UPE, but you look at the conditions of the school. They need to build better classes. Children are writing on the ground. Our response is, let the children go to school. Because many of us went to similar classrooms, even worse. Under a mango tree, you learn how to write on the ground. You grew up to become a Musevenomics ambassador. And you can talk about the subject. So, while it is not the desired situation, it is the reality at the moment. So, use creativity. How do you manage? How do you manage the economy? So, that creativity has taken us through a number of things where we blend our traditional wisdom, local practices, and community-based factors. The PTC for us in the PDM, the community-based facilitators, which we are going to talk about tomorrow, the parish action plans, the SPEAR, are all part of being creative and innovative to see how do we deliver services closer to the people and as fast as possible. Those are examples. Let me give you an example, and before I go to the next one. Operation Wealth Creation, I will pick that as an example. Because in pillar number 1 was about rationality, about evidence. In 2004, the Ministry of Defense in Uganda issued a defense white paper. It was a paper talking about the security situation in Uganda and what it will be 20 years later. So they said in the white paper that the future security threats of our country will not be combat in nature with a gun, but they will come from food insecurity, they will come from poverty, they will come from unemployment, malnutrition, and cyber. Of course, they listed other ways. So, fast forward, 2011, we had the worst drought in the Horn of Africa, if you remember that very well. Food prices shot up, inflation went up. Of course, we had the elections and other issues. Our economy was on its knees. So, then of course, by 2010, 2011, the president had also moved around. He saw how poor people were, how many were living in subsistence economy. So almost statistics showed him 68% of our people in agriculture were in subsistence. So using that pillar of rationality, the evidence, the evidence he gathered, and this pillar of creativity, he said, how do I avert the security threats of our country? So in the military, they have what they call operations. They have different types of operations. They have an operation other than war. They have a combat operation. Combat operation is like the one you are seeing you have seen in DRC, Operation Suja. That is combat. We take our firepower. But then there is an operation other than war. So Operation Wealth Creation was created as an operation other than war, an operation of the UPDF, which was not going to be combat in nature, but was to fight poverty, was to fight unemployment, was to fight food insecurity. Then the question was, how do we start? Where do we start from? So the easier way was to use the UPDF itself. But then UPDF are not experts. So they said, why don't we work with the people of agriculture? But of course, they came in, worked with the Minister of Agriculture. Of course, there were a number of changes that time which were not understood because I think we didn't explain properly. So they were not understood. But the effect over time has been the country is food secure. Overall, there are some pockets of insecurity, food insecurity. There are some pockets of malnutrition, but overall, we have improved a lot. The country is richer. Our farmers who were poor were given coffee seedlings, were given piglets, the old chicks, heifers, and a number of them are now making a lot of money in your communities. You must be seeing them. The results speak for themselves. Let me tell you what happened in another country that did not do what Uganda did. This was Sudan. Mr. Bashir was a feared general. He gave us a lot of problems as Uganda. He gave us a lot of problems. He was a feared general. But he did not predict that food will be a problem until a few years later, actually when Uganda had already deployed in agriculture, and the price of bread rose in Sudan. Of course, there was the Arab uprising, the Arab Spring, and the people revolted because the food prices were growing. And Bashir's government was overthrown by the people themselves. And for us in Uganda, we were like, I think we saw this earlier, and we invested in food. So the food prices in Uganda have been stable for a very long time. So we are a country that has a lot of food when you compare to any other country on the continent. We have varieties. But it was a deliberate effort, and it required creativity. Of course, there was a lot of resistance. Even the PDM itself, we have used a lot of creativity to make things work, despite the lack of funding. The next one is resilience and adaptability. That our economy, as over time we have built resilience to shocks, for example. Shocks like weather, sometimes you have issues of energy prices going up. We invest in reserves, energy reserves, even in drugs. We have our own reserves with national medical stores to help us withstand any shocks if it happens. So historically, we have learned to survive in very difficult circumstances. That's why during COVID-19, when everybody was struggling, we used that pillar to go through a very difficult time that was very complicated for even the most sophisticated economies, but we managed to sail through. We have also managed to build resilience through diversification. Like I told you, we diversify the production base. We have diversified from one sector to another. And so if one sector is affected, another one isn't. We have built reserves, which I have talked about. But on adaptability, this is about being flexible, not being rigid. And we have been telling you colleagues in PDM implementation, guys, you need to be flexible. There is no money. So, but you know, when we had the NADs, there was a lot of money. So no, this is not NAD. Be flexible a bit. But Museveni, as a president in 1986, was a very big critic of the West, a huge one. But when he became president, he saw the reality. There was no money. And his economists, using the pillar of rationality, gave him evidence that, sir, the only people who have money and can help us are the people you don't like, those capitalists you criticize. He tried barter trade. He said, okay, I have no money. Okay, let me be realistic and work within my limitations. Tanzania, give me transformers. I'll give you maize. That's when the Americans found out that Tanzanians had food problems. And he gave them free maize. Before ours was harvested, it collapsed. So now he started learning. Now, he said, what do I do? He said, no, sir, you have no other option but to talk to those Western guys, the people you don't like. So he invited them and started negotiations. World Bank, IMF, they came, gave him a very long list of conditions. Painfully, he took a number of these decisions, but he kept, out of the 100%, he rejected 24%, implemented 76%, but painfully, knowing that when things get better, I'll get back these things. For example, privatization of certain enterprises. The closure of UCB, our cooperative bank, Uganda Airlines, Uganda Development Corporation was painful, first on us. But because it was a condition that we needed to comply with so we can get the funding to support our recovery, we took them on, knowing that when the time is right, we will undo this wrong. So later, as we know now, Uganda Airlines is back, not doing very well, but it will grow. UDC is back and financing local businesses. We have not brought back Uganda Commercial Bank, but we have Post Bank, which has now rebranded as Pearl Bank. We have Pride, which was a microfinance institution. It's now a bank. We have housing finance. Our UDB has been recapitalized. So we are rebuilding what we had lost. But we had to be flexible first. Listen to our partners. Invest, grow, but don't lose the focus. So you will be flexible, but you remain focused on the objective. He says that our approaches are flexible, but our goal of socio-economic transformation is fixed. So you remain fixed to the goal, but the approaches can change. So these you can apply in your home. So these are some of the examples of where we have used adaptability as a country. Number 6, I move very fast, is sovereignty. This is basically independence in economic decision making. That as a country, we can be allowed to make our own decisions. We cannot be swayed by what the foreigners say. We will reject. So when the World Bank was trying to intervene, we said, sir, we are sorry, we love our partnership, but we will not do what you're telling us to do. So they walked away with the money. But we continued to engage. So sovereignty does not mean, economic sovereignty does not mean we cut ourselves off to the world. But we make sure we take independent decisions in terms of our economic management. However, we retain strategic partnerships with those countries that have the same belief with us, that want to work with us. We will not cut ourselves off to the world. So sovereignty does not mean we are not going to work with anybody. That will be a closed economy. We are an open economy, work with everybody. But those who can understand our vision, those who are looking at our strategic direction, and can partner with us as mutual brothers and sisters. So that is one of the key pillars. Then there is resource sovereignty, where we have taken charge of our own resources, our human resource, our minerals. You have seen how long it has taken us to make the Bunyoro richer by extracting our oil from Bunyoro. It has taken us long, but we said, no, we must be responsible. So invest first. Invest in human capital, invest in infrastructure. When you go now to Bunyoro today, the infrastructure is very good. And I think you guys have the best opportunity to reach the $500 billion because the right investment is already in place. So, number last is inclusivity, shared prosperity. This is what we do. So I will not waste a lot of time on it. PDM, what we are doing is all about shared prosperity for all Ugandans. As simple as that. This one I'm not going to put in a lot of effort. But in inclusivity, we are not only talking about money, the capital. We are also talking about the investments we are making that enable other people in the community to create wealth. When we invest in rural roads, the $1 billion that the government sends in the communities to build those roads, when we invest in rural electrification, when we invest in ICT infrastructure to reach everybody across the country, it means that now smaller factories are coming up even in the remotest part of Uganda. What I didn't tell you that in 1986, we were importing basic stuff like maize flour. We had a company called Hodari, which was selling maize flour to Uganda. Yeah? Bread, some districts were only picking bread here in Kampala. Bread was a very big thing. So, but in inclusivity, we are not just talking about the capital, We are talking about all the investments that we are making that can enable an ordinary Ugandan to create wealth. So when Dr. Ngabo later tomorrow or later today talks about the SPEAR and the parish action plan, in the SPEAR we identify all the assets that we have in the parish which can be used by the parishioners to create wealth. And as such, nobody should be left behind because you don't have a necessary asset. We invest in KAIP and bring processors. We invest in KAIP and bring storage facilities to the community. So that, Kajura, first to hold on, this is very important. You know we are running out of time, but it's a very important subject. So we know we have to invest in those assets that we need to create wealth for all Ugandans in the parish. So these 7 pillars are so important. And just to remind you, the pillars enable us to understand why the government of Uganda under the leadership of President Museveni does the things the way they do them. The 7 pillars, you can successfully apply them as a PDM focal point person and achieve greater results in your local government. Maybe next time we'll discuss how you can use them in your own area. You can use them in your home as a head of a family and create an economic miracle in your home. So we are not talking about Musevenomics just for fun. We believe that it's a model that has enabled Uganda to transform. It is transformative, and all leaders must appreciate it and apply it in their daily life.